Okay, so welcome everyone to the most recent, or I guess our current e-commerce event. This is a shared event with the Shiawassee Economic Development Partnership, the Shiawassee Regional Chamber of Commerce and Small Business Development Center. Want to give an opportunity for either Greg Klapko with the Chamber or Cheryl Peterson with SBDC if you want to make any quick introductory comments. Greg, I see your camera coming back on.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us virtually today. We're looking forward to this e-commerce series and more to come. And we appreciate Brent and the SCDP working with us as we kind of kick this off anew in 2021. So welcome everyone, and we look forward to more in the future. And I'm looking forward to today's presentation.
Thanks, Greg. Cheryl, do you have anything you'd like to say? Looks like not, so I think we're going to move forward from that. Just one quick note, this is intended to be an ongoing series for e-commerce. So if there's any topics you'd like to see covered, we're certainly open to that. We want to make sure these programs are providing good information and good value for your time. And also need to thank Davis Cartage, who is the sponsor of this event, and wanted to allow Kevin Nevison a couple of moments to kind of talk about what they've got going on. And again, thank you, Kevin, for Davis and their sponsorship of the e-commerce series.
Yeah, no, thank you, Brett. We appreciate what SCDP does for the businesses in the community, and thanks for inviting us to be included in this event. As this is an e-commerce event, just a quick background on Davis Cartage. We've been in business since 1941, celebrating 80 years of successful business. We operate in the transportation and warehousing space. We're headquartered right here locally in Corunna, and we have distribution centers located in Corunna, Owasso, Lansing, and down in Southwest Michigan. And as it relates to e-commerce, we can be as involved as much as you'd like or as little involved, but we can provide you with short-term or long-term storage space. If you need a drop shipping location to ship your products or hold products, raw materials, finished goods, we could supplement those businesses involved in e-commerce. We operate about 500,000 square feet at our facilities in Michigan, and we can handle anything from like a carton moving across the country or a full truckload. So I know the e-commerce locally is probably a smaller segment of business, but we have the resources here to support you. And if we don't, we can certainly act as a referral to help you with a partner we may have in a different part of the country. And we also supplement getting products into the Amazon distribution centers as well. So that's it in a nutshell as it relates to e-commerce. Again, thanks for including Davis Cartage in this event.
Thank you, Kevin. So with that, I think we're going to throw things over to our presenter, Michael Jordan, who is an Owasso-based photographer with David Lauren Photographic. Michael's got an extensive background in product photography, working in everything from automotive to more the food sector, and he's really covered a lot of ground, including some great video work he's done for SCDP. If you've seen any of the videos we've put out in the last few years, Michael is the brains behind that operation. So with that, Michael, if you want to kick it off, I will just reiterate real quickly that we're hoping to have this be a real discussion-focused program. So please feel free to get involved with your questions. We want to make sure that you're leaving today with good information for your business. So Michael, why don't you take it from here?
Hi, I'm Michael Jordan, Michael David Lauren Jordan. And the David Lauren is where the name of the company came from. We started in 1991. This is our 30th year anniversary. And at the time in 1991, if I had Michael Jordan photography, even before Google was a thing, people thought could be something different. So we had to manage the expectations of it not being a basketball player. So we named it David Lauren Photographic, which is the middle name of my father and my grandfather. We have done product photography for over 30 years now. I started out in automotive in Detroit after I got my degree from LCC's commercial photography program, which was an amazing program for the time. And we've done everything from coffee to cars since then, and now we do a lot of video work as well, lots of storytelling. Today, I'm here to answer your questions. Photography is a vast and complex subject with both artistic and a technical side, and if you are involved in it, then you must have some, and you're new to it, then I'm sure you had some burning questions, but hopefully I can help you help you through. I think what I'd like to do though, I've done a couple time lapse behind the scenes of two different styles of photography. One is a high-end illustrative. We call them illustrations. They are more of a product shot. We call them the hero shot. They are designed to elicit emotion. They get beautiful light and everything else. And then the other end of the spectrum, we have product on white, which was what got a lot of studios through winter in Michigan. When we'd shoot cars and automotive, when we weren't shooting them in the studio, we'd shoot a lot of product on white. So I will, share that video out for you now. We were having a little trouble with the audio earlier, so hopefully it will come through. But let's see if we can't get this to work. This is shot in our studio right downtown. And this is more of an emotive type image. The hero of the shot is okay, so that kind of shows what high-end lighting, very careful attention to detail, product placement. In this particular instance, it was all about the liquor being sold, the Prosecco, I believe it was. And we did some variations with the backgrounds, but the lighting pretty much stayed the same. We did a couple tricks to make the subject, the liquid, glow. You notice that it had a really good light coming through the back of the bottle. That was all designed. That's all by design. Now, on the other end of this spectrum, I have a time lapse of a shot we did with New Wave Manufacturing here recently that I will share. You guys saw that okay? It came through all right? Yeah?
Yep, looks good.
All right, good. I'm perfect honest, I'm a Zoom guy. This is my first time on Teams, so bear with me. Let's see. Yeah. Good. This is product literally on their location.
Michael, I don't think we're getting the screen share right now.
Okay, let me try again. Let's see. Movies and TV. There you are.
Yep, we got it now. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim Schultz, New Way Manufacturing. He makes putter head, valve feeding. Lots of little products. Got long day. Shooting tethered to the computer. That up. Take that again. That's just some of the gear put it together. And this is that was actually on one of my covers. And we like to have fun. Okay, so by showing those two approaches, I'm hoping that that'll be a jump off point to some of the discussions, some of the questions that you have. So I'll turn it over to y'all. What do you want to know?
So we do have one question, the first question that has coming through on the chat, and that is, how would you go about taking photos of larger products?
We'll start and work backwards. What's the end usage of the photograph? Always think of the end usage of the photograph first. Is it going to be, what type of photograph is it? And how big is the product, right? Do we want to have the illustrative, or do we just want to have an informational transfer, like a product on white? It's, this is the product, this is what it does. Do we have any specifics on that? Like a very large product?
In this case, it looks like we're talking about boat lifts and docks.
Boat lifts and docks, gotcha. I would shoot them unless you can find a very large studio space, which is going to be extremely costly. I would shoot those on location and show use. That would be the best way to do it. If you can find a large enough space to actually house and shoot the product, it can be lit inside, and then you could knock out the background in Photoshop or an app like that. But the fastest, simplest way to do it would be to actually show it in installation. Short of getting into, hiring a professional, getting it lit properly, and knocking it out. We have shot giant products in the factory. We used to do a lot of work for Viron with the huge air scrubbers that they did. We would come in with studio lights, set them all up, make sure it was lit properly, and then we would go in and cut it all out and then drop it on white or a gradiated background. That would be one way to do it. But short of that, then I would, if you're looking to do it yourself, I would shoot it in place, showing actual usage. Make sense?
Yeah, so to kind of take off on that a little bit, for a lot of, I think, the business owners we've got participating today, we're looking at, how to maybe get involved and get some photos for your own use that you can maybe just kind of bootstrap on your own. I mean, how much equipment do you think is going to be required? I mean, obviously everyone is walking around with a camera on their phone. Is it possible to get some functional photography with something as simple as that? Where would you start that new beginner who's just looking to start building a library?
Yes, you can do it on your phone. It's amazing how far the technology has come. It's very, very, very doable. A couple of things I would suggest is, and I do this in all my workshops too. The thing you really want to have when it comes to that is get a tripod. I know that sounds boring and mundane, but get a tripod that will actually hold your phone, and get a decent one. This is something you shouldn't spend $1 million on, but get one that isn't the cheapest. And if depending on, of course, the photography, get that phone locked down. Okay, it's going to do a number of things for you. One, it's going to slow you down. The problem people have with phones is that when it comes to trying to make it work professionally for their business, is they're trained to as a snapshot medium. Oh, boom, I got it. That's it. When you're doing product photography, it's a little bit more disciplined. It's a little bit more intentional. And one of the best ways to get there quickly is to lock that camera down. Okay, put it on a tripod, set it up so that you can see what you're actually shooting. And what'll happen is that your photography, and this is just in photography in general, will get much better because you're slowing down. You're looking at making an image with intention. And intention is really, really the key when it comes to making connective imagery. So get a tripod, get it locked down before you squeeze the shutter. And with a phone, it's a very light tap. Don't jam the button because then you move the camera, and camera movement ruins more photographs than, well, a lot of different things. But make sure it's well lit, either with window light or supplemental lighting, which is a whole other topic we can talk about. But the first thing I would say is, yes, your phone can do it. And yes, you can, if you get a tripod, you can have quality photos on your website. From a phone. It's pretty amazing stuff. Now, having said that, if you're going to do a lot of this, I would suggest buying a simple 35 millimeter camera kit. Like a Rebel, Canon Rebel is amazing for the price point. It works really, really well. Surprisingly well. But it always comes back to locking the camera down if you can, because it really does make a big difference. Yeah, definitely. Lock the camera down.
So another question coming across on the chat is regarding Photoshop. Would you suggest trying to learn the program, or is that something to outsource to someone else?
Here's the thing. I think it if you're going to be in photography, if you're going to be using photography, if it's part of your business's natural workflow, I would learn the program. And here's the cool thing about it. Photoshop has been around forever. Forever. So there are endless YouTube tutorials, and there are some really, really great YouTube tutorials out there. So it's not nearly as hard to learn as it was back when I was on version 2. So yes, I would, if you have the time and it's something you're interested in, definitely do it. It'll allow you to do a couple things. One, it'll make you look at your photography that much closer. You will look at your photography in a different way because you're the one that has to deal with the issues. So it's like, oh, gee, my picture's a little blurry. Oh, I should have locked it down on a tripod. You'll start seeing your imagery differently. But if you don't have the time, or your time is better spent doing other things for your business, then yeah, outsource it. Like I had a job a while ago where I had a lot of stuff that I was going to do outline, and it was backed up against another job, and I was really kind of nervous. There are a lot of services that will knock it out to white, knock a product out to, just a clipping path around it so you can put any background in. There are a million services out there. I get emails quite a bit, mostly out of India. You upload it to their server, they do the work, and then you download it again. But for the most part, if you can and you have the time and you have the interest, learn it. It's a skill that you will have forever, and it'll make you a better photographer.
So as a follow-up to that, what should somebody be looking for if they do make the decision to go outsource with some of that work? What should they be looking for as far as selecting the right company? I mean, it sounds like there are a lot of options out there. Are they fairly interchangeable? Are there some things you should really look for to get the best product back?
It all depends on what you're looking for out of the retoucher, right? If you've got a zillion images and you just want to knock them off, I would do a Google search and look at the reviews. There are just too many out there to say. There's not like one great retouching house anymore, like there used to be one great photo lab. It just doesn't work like that anymore. If you can find someone locally, that'd be even better, because then you can have a sit-down conversation with them. As far as locally, I don't know anyone. Having said that, but if you know somebody who, likes working in Photoshop and you have a personal connection to them, then that would be my first choice. My second choice would be to, find someone on the internets.
Okay, we haven't seen any additional questions across the chat. Is
I
any of
have
our
a
participants?
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Colleen. I do Colleen's Greens, which is I sell farm produce and herbs. And right now, I've been doing a lot of online farm sales. And what I do, instead of just taking a picture of a tomato, is I've been doing prepared foods and taking pictures of how to prepare the food and using that as my advertising. And my daughter's always told me, make it look wet, don't, it's more interesting. Do you have any tips or ideas of how to show steam, how to show moisture in the food that you can capture with the pictures? It's kind of a challenge.
Yeah, food is challenging, and it's a lot of fun. And I don't know if you know this, but there are professionals that are absolutely dedicated. They're called food stylists, and that's their specialty. That's all they do. Some of the tricks we pulled from them for different clients for ours is if you take, for instance, if you want to have like that fresh washed tomato look, take a little water spritzer, right? And you can spritz them with water. You'll have a tendency to overdo it at first, but you'll get the hang of it to get it where it looks right. And I'm talking just a little at Myers, 99-cent little. I used to do a lot of work for the Nature Conservancy, and we'd shoot flowers. It's very specific species to it, and that would be one of my secrets. I would have a little spritzer bottle of water. If you want to make those droplets last a little longer, you can get some glycerin, just clear glycerin, and you can mix it into, I think it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And what'll happen is that the water beads will stay. They won't dehydrate as fast, and they'll actually create surface tension on the product, so they will stay in place longer. That's a good cheat. As far as the steam goes, there are a couple. That's a little trickier. They used to make what they call steam chips, and I think if you do a Google search, you could probably find a manufacturer of them. Can I ask, what specifically are you looking for steam to come out of?
I'm sorry, say that again. I'm switching back over to not mute.
Okay, I'm sorry. What are you looking for the steam to come out of? Is it coming out of the pot, or?
I made like a plate of sauteed vegetables, and trying to take a picture, I'd put it on the stove, and so I have the spotlight from the stove that shines down on it,
right?
So it doesn't look dry. But honestly, I'm not sure how to show steam because it doesn't really show up when I take the picture.
Right.
So
steam has
I haven't figured that out yet.
Black background is going to help you, and you actually have to light the steam that's coming off the plate. Something that we tried a while ago and we had reasonable success with was to use a closed steamer, right? So you take a closed steamer and you get it close to the product, and it's a timing thing. As soon as you get it heated up and the steam actually comes off, and we pulled the steamer out, we took the picture instantly. But that's going to be kind of the approach there. They do make chemical steam chips, but they used to. That was years ago. So I don't know if they. But basically what it is it's a couple chemicals that combine to make a steam-like effect. But yeah, you're gonna have to light it a bit and have a dark background so it pops.
I'll try that. Thank you.
Okay.
So another one out of the chat here, Michael. Best suggestions for photographing shiny metallic one-coat One Color Materials. Looks like this is a company doing etching into metal and trying to capture those details.
Yeah, that's always a challenge. That's fun. That's basically what you're going to do. You'll want, and it all depends on the product, but you're going to want a large, broad, diffuse light source. I've seen things as inexpensive as shower curtains being placed, stretched taut, and that is the way you control the highlights. Your light source has to have barn doors, which are the little flaps on the side of the lights. If you get a light for this, make sure that you can control the beam spread, and that is going to be how you create the highlights and the shadows in the actual etched material. You're also going to want to have some sort of way of subtracting light as well, because you will invariably not like the way the highlight is, or there'll be what we call a skinkle on that particular product where you don't want. And we've used stuff as simple as a coat hanger with a little dot of black tape on it, and just kind of figured out where it needed to go, and then grip that up with a baby tripod, or in my world it's called a C stand, which is a heavy steel stand that was specifically designed for studio work. But you can get away with, small little, I've even had blue tack, which is this amazing little stuff that you hang posters with, is going to be your best friend in this situation, because you can stick it to anything. So once you get that little dot to take care of that little highlight, find something off camera that you can stick it with blue tack if you don't have the grip equipment. But generally, with reflective products like that, it is trial and error, and you're going to want to start with a large, broad, diffuse light source. We've used tracing paper. The bottle shot that was in the video earlier, that was a large piece of frosted plexiglass. I think it's 3 foot by 2 foot that I built a wood frame around. We used to shoot a lot of jewelry, and we'd put that at overhead, and then we take the main light source, and I would literally have my assistant move it around until I liked the highlights that I liked. And then when there were highlights that I didn't like, I would just bring in what we call flags, which are just, it can be pieces of black tin foil or anything that blocks the light. And we craft the highlights in the product by doing subtractive with flags. Make sense?
So we actually got some crowdsourcing happening in the chat here. I know that we had some questions about the tripod for a phone. It looks like we've had some possible links put up for that. So if you haven't checked out the chat, folks, it's a good answer there. Generally, how many pictures are you going to take in a session, and how do you know when you're done?
Oh boy, that's a good question. For the product, are you talking just straight on product photography? When we would do large catalog, we would have very specific goals in mind. It's like, okay, how many angles do we need to see this product? One, okay, that's good. And we would shoot it, we'd check focus, we'd make sure it was lit properly, there were no nasty highlights, no nasty shadows, and it's like, okay, that's good, next. And that's how we would get, 60 in a day. If it's an illustration that's a little more involved, but because you will do minor variations, because you've already, paid the long dollar for the setup, the time, you have usually some very complex lighting, and so you go in and you swap out major or minor props here and there. Illustrations generally a lot more. Product on white, 1 or 2. Make sure they're sharp, move on. That's also, as long as we're talking a little bit about camera and process. Shoot in the highest resolution your camera will allow. And if you're shooting with a DSLR, always shoot RAW format. Okay? Used to be when RAW format is the raw image sensor, or raw data off the sensor. When your camera takes a picture, it takes that information of all the little light pixels that hit the sensor, and it crushes them into a JPEG, or it writes them into a RAW file. When it crushes them into a JPEG, you lose a lot of the dynamic range and a lot of the detail right out of the camera. The raw format, there's no conversion, there's no There's nothing else in the process chain, okay, that deletes data. It's the raw image data right off from the camera, and it's powerful. When it was first introduced in the higher end DSLR cameras 20 years ago, first kid on the block, of course, I shot everything in RAW, even though it was crazy because I had a 512. I mean, it was a tiny little hard drive, and you had to download quite frequently. But what's really cool about that is because it's RAW format, the software we have now, 20 years later, I can go back in, open those up, and do amazing things because the software gets so much better. If you shoot in JPEG, that information is thrown out instantly, right? Yeah, sure, you can get a lot more images on a card, but now that doesn't matter. You can buy a 128 gigabyte card for 30, 40 bucks now. So always shoot raw with JPEG if it's an option on your camera, because it for your archive and just to have that peace of mind to be able to go in and slightly manipulate your shadows and highlights. It's definitely worth it. There are some apps even for cell phones now that will allow you to shoot that will allow the cell phone to save the raw data as well. Most cell phones default to JPEG. And even if you can't shoot in RAW, again, shoot to the highest quality JPEGs you can. And if you can turn off in-camera sharpening, that's a good thing too, because you want to do that in post. When you're shooting with a camera, strive to get the best possible data out. Don't let the camera do anything to it if you can. And that's why RAW is so powerful. It gives you the power as a user on the back end, outside of the craziness of a shoot, to do the manipulations and craft the image you want. Now, having said that, Photoshop's amazing. Editing programs are amazing. Get it in camera first. Really, seriously. I mean, if there's something in the shot that you don't like, after you get good at Photoshop, you'll start thinking, well, I can just take it out in post. No, take 2 seconds and take the branch out, or turn the product a little. Just get it in camera the best you possibly can, given the time constraints and the budget constraints. Post-processing shouldn't be a crutch. It should be, an enhancement. So there, I think I'm done with that post-processing rant. That answer a question?
If not, certainly keep putting the follow-ups into the chat function or jump in. But another question here, Michael, what kind of strategy would you take for using photography for more of a service-based business?
Can you elaborate on what that means?
I think for instance, here is education classes.
Photography for services. Oh, you mean? Oh, that's from Renee. Okay. What do you want? Okay. I always ask this question. What do you want the viewer to come away from after they see the photograph?
I'd say we're looking for promotion of the particular class. We want them to come away from it wanting to be involved.
Happy, smiling faces, engaging with each other.
Okay, great.
I mean, medium telephoto shots. Nobody cares about a wide shot of a classroom. Use that maybe as an establishing shot, but it doesn't give you any. You want to listen emotional response from this image, right? You want to say, I want to be part of that. How do we do that? And we've shot a lot of education. And what you do is you have happy people engaged with each other, right? And there are a number of ways you can go about that. But, to take a wide shot and say, this is the class. Yeah, it looks, I have, shot in a lot of different places, and unless it's like the laser lab at MSU, it's not going to, it's just a classroom. So get the people engaged, get happy, smiling faces of folks engaged.
Thanks.
Close.
Okay.
Will you be shooting with a DSLR, like a Canon or a phone, or what's your format?
That's a really good question. After this advice, hopefully something, maybe like the Canon Rebel.
Yeah, do it. And shoot in RAW. All right.
Okay, got that. Yeah.
And Ideally, you would light it, but I realize in your situation you aren't going to be able to do that. So make sure the classrooms you choose are well lit.
Okay.
And you can get away with a higher ISO. ISO is the sensitivity, how sensitive the camera is to light. But after the more ISO, the higher you push that, the grainier and less detailed the photographs are. I would try to stay below 800. I mean, 800 even is, for this situation, for this application, is kind of pushing it. But if you have to get the shot and you have no other thing, you can pull it up, push it up a little higher. It's been a while since I've messed around with the Rebel on that, but
Okay.
you should
And
be.
Leslie, I'm going to call you.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Okay, thanks.
I like it.
So our next question, Michael, how do you go about photographing clear or translucent products like plastics or glass?
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. It depends on the product. There are two schools of thoughts on this. It's called white line, black line. Okay. If you look at a photograph of a say a glass, and you've all seen those images of a glass. They've got black lines around them, and they're shot backlit. Okay. If you backlight something if you create a sweep out of a translucent material, and you light the sweep and you put glass on it, it will have black lines around it where the light is refracting around it, and that gives a shape. So that would be your black line, would basically be high key, and you'd see it. Now the reverse of that is like the wine bottle you saw earlier. That would be, actually it's kind of a hybrid because we cheated a little bit, but the highlights on that wine bottle were put in intentionally by that large 2 foot by 3 foot plexiglass that was lit with a HMI light, and with that's white line. With that, you craft the highlights, right? They don't just naturally fall because of refraction. It's very dependent on the product, and it's very dependent on what you want the viewer to take away. Is it an informational exchange? Well, then maybe white line, just shooting it on a white translucent background and letting that come through will be fine. Is it more emotive and you want to have more control over, the highlight placement, then you want to do white line. But either way, it's kind of tricky. It's fun. It's challenging.
So lighting has come up in a number of these answers here. So for our folks who are maybe more looking at sort of a bootstrap mentality, I mean, are there any tips you can give to try to get the most out of lighting without that, professional level lighting equipment?
What's your budget, man? There are a number of, okay, I'm going to talk about what makes good light, okay? What makes good light? You've all seen photographs taken under fluorescent lights with low CRI. This is something you're going to be hearing a lot about in the next couple of minutes. CRI stands for the color rendition index, right? And the new LEDs, when they first came out, if you remember, you'd look at them and they'd look, the skin looked like flat. There was no vibrance in the colors. That's because it's an emitter. It's not a black body radiator. They've gotten a lot better, and as a matter of fact, the professional lights I use for video now are LED, but those are high-end. They're very specifically designed to have high CRI, color rendition index. When you look at the tips of different ways that we light professionally, you'll see a couple of different things. One is tungsten halogen, still one of the best. I look at work I did under tungsten hot light 20 years ago, and it looks great because it's a natural light source. It's coming from light from a burning element, in this case the halogen, and it renders skin and flesh and tone very, very well because it has a high CRI. I think tungsten light is like a high CRI of 98, whereas fluorescent lights in the beginning were a high CRI of 70. So you will never, ever be able to get really good, colorful, punchy pictures if you are shooting under a low CRI light. If you take away one thing when it comes to lighting, CRI is king when it comes to continuous light sources. If you want to take the challenge and use strobe, which is a lot more challenging because it's like just a pop, that is the gold standard for still, even still. Strobe light has an extremely high CRI, and it's balanced for daylight. Within the color spectrum, you've seen photographs that were shot under indoor conditions, and they call yellow, kind of reddish. That's because that light is burning at 3,200 degrees Kelvin, which is great. 3,200 is warm, it's fuzzy. But if your camera's set for daylight, which is cool, at 5,500 degrees Kelvin, it's going to look warm if you shoot it inside. If you take it outside, it'll look nice. When you see photographs that are taken outside on a nice sunny day, they all have vibrant colors. Why is that? Well, because cameras are designed around the sun, because that's the primary light source of our planet, and it has a high CRI. Sunlight is 100 CRI. So if you want great, if you want good quality lights, look at their CRI. If you go to Amazon and you look at LED lights, which is still, I mean, they do make some decent LED lights that are cheap. Always look at the CRI rating, and if they don't have a CRI rating, move on, okay? In order to get a good light, and LEDs still aren't that bright. They're not nearly as bright as strobe, but if you want to get a good LED CRI light, at least a 94 to 96 CRI is what you're going to be looking for continuous light. For strobe, there are a number of options that will actually give you better light, but it's harder to control. It's much harder to control. Some of the lower end speed lights, I think Yangano and Godox are two. Actually, I've switched over to Godox for my small light kits. I mean, you can get into those strobe lights for less than 30, 40 bucks. And the radio triggers for them for another $30, $40. The challenge again is you'll actually see. So now if you want to go a really kind of lower end thing,
what do you think?
You can go to Home Depot and buy work lights that are halogen, if they still make them.
It might be helpful, but because of what we're going to go
But if they're doing, if you use the hot lights, and this is what I started with talking about, your photographs are going to look great. You just have to make sure that you're white balanced for them, and all cameras now have white balance. You know, it's usually a little sunshine icon or a light bulb icon. The light bulb icon is 3,200 degrees Kelvin. The sunshine icon is for outside, 5,500 degrees Kelvin. Okay, but you can go to Home Depot, find a halogen light, and make a diffuser out of a shower curtain. Keep it away because the halogen will melt and burn. Ask me how I know. But that might be a good way to get started on being able to see the light. And that's what you really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is see the light. How does it affect my product? How does it look? You know, are the colors fresh? Are they vibrant? Or are they flat and awful? If they're flat and awful, then you've got a low CRI lighting condition. Or if they're like warm on one side and cool on the other, meaning they're yellow or blue, you've got a cross-contamination. So if you have window light coming in and you have an overhead light that's tungsten, you have this reflected light coming in from the window, that's going to be blue, and your overhead light's going to be white. Now, sometimes that can work, but if you're doing kind of an illustrative shot, more of an emotive piece, it can work fine. I've done it myself. But if you're looking for a strict product representation, that's not going to work. So there's a long way to Memphis about light. Short story, too long, didn't read. Look on Amazon, look for high CRI lights if you don't want to go strobe. So there.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Do you see a trend for 360 or panoramic photos in online catalogs?
They were all the thing, and I had a colleague that was thought it was going to be the greatest thing in the world. And the truth is that the way we consume photography has changed so much that we want that information in a split second. As long as it takes, how much time does this take, right? Where I do believe they can be very useful in certain situations, especially with a new product and you're trying to explain what that product is, especially something people have never seen before. But I mean, if you're selling knives, pretty much everybody has an idea of what a knife looks like and you don't need a 360 of it. But they're kind of fun. They're kind of cool. Whether or not you'll get the usage on your analytics from it is a completely different story. But they are cool.
Next question. My photo challenge is I want to photograph trucks moving with Michigan backdrops, such as a truck driving through a city or on a freeway with iconic Michigan backdrops. Also want to get the company logo in it. Is that a Photoshop thing, or is that something where you should try to get the real thing?
Get the real thing. It's funny this question comes up. I did a whole bunch of stock photography work for DHT Trucking a while back. It was fun. It got me back to my automotive roots. And we actually built a rig that I don't think this would be applicable, but we built a rig that we laid down dolly track, and we had the camera on dolly track with a pole, and the truck would just creep, and we drag the shutter, take a really slow shutter speed, so the wheels would be spinning, the background would be blurred, but the truck and everything in it would be ultra sharp. It was great, but it took a long time to set up, and it took a lot of cooperation and timing to get it right. What we did with a lot of the work was we got a convertible, and we got some sandbags, and I laid out of the convertible, and that was a chase car, and we shot from the chase car. We used slow shutter speeds, 1/15 of a second, and we shot a lot, because when you're doing motion blur backgrounds and that sort of thing that make it feel like the speed, like the power, which is important in these kind of images, you'll want to get that movement, and to get that movement, you're going to get, I would say, about 80% blown shots because the wind blew or whatever. But the way to do that, at least in my experience, is a chase car, preferably convertible, on a beautiful day in Michigan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we are just checking the time here. We got about 10 minutes left. So if you do want to try to get some last questions in, please feel free to enter them into the chat. But what we've got right now, Michael, any tips for photographing flower arrangements and product displays in store with an eye for website, Facebook, Instagram usage?
Yeah. When we weren't shooting cars in Detroit, we shoot FTD, and that was just, like I said, product on white. But in-store displays, I would try to figure out how to get some light on the product. If you have a wonderful window that works really, really well and that gets you a lot of good light, that could be your set. That could be your stage. I don't know if you're looking for like setting up a catalog, or if you're just trying to show the product in the store in its environment. But window light is going to be your friend if you don't want to, spend the extra money, or if you have an okay camera and don't have a flash for it. If you do have a good camera and a good flash, take the flash and bounce it off the ceiling. A lot of the strobes that go on top of cameras these days, they have a rotating head, and I have that is my go-to. That when I'm doing on location event work, you take the head and you bounce it into the ceiling, and what that does is it creates the large, broad source of light falling on the product, and then you just adjust that out. Not knowing what kind of camera system you have, it makes it a little challenging. If you're using your cell phone, once again, get it on a tripod because you'll have sharper pictures. And maybe with a possible of some sort of fill light, if you have some sort of lamp or something, you could make sure that you open up the shadows with that. But again, you might get into cross contamination. Without knowing end usage and it's more specifics of end usage, that would probably be my go-to. Without any extra lighting, if you don't have it, get it next to a window. Is that what you were in products displays?
Not
For
seeing any follow-ups on the chat.
Okay. In product displays, yeah, just go around. If you can get a 35 millimeter or a DSLR, bounce flash into the ceiling and adjust accordingly. That would be my. If you have a cell phone, the lighting's going to be a little bit more challenging unless the store is really, really well lit. You're going to get cross contamination between the overhead lights and the window light. So I would pick one. But regardless, the camera should be locked down because the light levels inside of a store usually aren't bright enough to make great photography.
Okay, we've got one here. I may ask our question asker Josh to maybe expound on this a little bit, but in your experience, what have you seen sell most customers on a product in use outside? I'm not 100% clear on what you're looking for there, Josh, so I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit. Not getting anything extra. I'm not hearing Josh there, so I don't know if Michael, you want to. Oh wait, here we go. Just what is the best way to capture outside?
Bigger than a bread box, larger than a bus. What do you primarily? What are you shooting? Is it small or these would determine approaches. If you're shooting cars, or trucks, we used to wait till magic hour, and that was
large
great.
on water is what I'm getting.
Boatish. When we used to spend all day waiting for about 20 minutes of light, and setting up for about 20 minutes light, and that's called magic hour. And that's where you see all these beautiful pictures of cars and boats and trucks. And they are all shot mostly in the hero shots are shot in magic hour. And magic hour is the moment after the sun goes down until you can't see anymore. It's about 20-30 minutes after the sun is down, and the whole world kind of gives back all the light it absorbed during the day. The sky is orange and beautiful, and it's broad and it's diffuse. Having said that, if say we're shooting a boat or something large product on water like a dock, it's still going to apply. Use the magic hour if you can. Get there at sunset, or get there actually way before sunset. Figure out your angles, figure out your shots, and shoot it. Sunrise is good too. Many days we got up at 4 or earlier after we preset until midnight the night before to make sure that we shot that the truck right. So try not to shoot in full sun. Full sun sounds like a great idea, and the light is very crisp, but the shadows are crisp as well. And a lot of times, even with a good camera that has a high dynamic range, meaning it can capture a lot of highlights and a lot of shadows, you're still going to have the harshness. If it were me, I would wait till an overcast day, because then the clouds act as a giant diffuser. Okay, you've heard that a lot today about diffusing the light. It acts as its own giant diffuser, and I'd shoot it then. First choice, magic hour, right? That low sun coming across the water, and you might even be able to get a couple of hero shots of the sun through and behind the product. But figure out your shot ahead of time. Get there at that. Get it on a tripod, and if you're shooting with like a DSLR, a remote release will save your bacon. They're cheap. You can get them on Amazon for $7. No reason not to have them, because they work, and they work really well, and they keep your hands away from the camera. Many shots are ruined. I said this before, by camera movement. A lot more shots are ruined by camera movement than subject movement. And when you're shooting at dusk and you keep your ISOs reasonable, like 100, 200, you need a tripod, and you need to have that remote release. If you do not have a remote release, like sometimes I get on location and it didn't make it in one of my kits, you can use your self-timer. Set it to self-timer, tap very gently the shutter, walk away. Tap the shutter, actually squeeze the shutter, walk away. And the camera will take the picture without your hands on it, moving the camera. That's how I'd shoot magic hour. That's how we shoot magic hour. and that's gonna give you the photograph that I think you're looking for.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. We are just about out of time, so I want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend. Hopefully this was informative. I got through a lot of questions, and hopefully you all are walking away with some good tips today. Thank you to Michael Jordan for sharing his expertise with us, and certainly, again, another thank you to our sponsor, Davis Cartage, for helping us put this event on. Again, the intent here is that this e-commerce is going to be an ongoing series. So if you have other areas that you're hoping to have access to some experts, other things you want to learn about, feel free to reach out to any of our host organizations, SEDP, the Chamber of Commerce, or the SBDC, and keep an eye out as we'll be continuing to put word out on these events going forward. So thank you again, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you.